Next guest, CEO of the Show Me Institute. Good morning, Brenda Talent.
Good morning, McGraw.
Good to have you back, as always. What is going on in the Missouri legislature?
Well, McGraw, sometimes you cannot make this stuff up. A bill was introduced a couple of weeks ago, and it's a bill that proposes to put a moratorium on charter schools in the state of Missouri for 22 months while we study the issue. And there are a series of questions in this bill that they want answered. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, McGraw. If you've ever been on the internet, you actually can Google these particular questions and find answers, because charter schools have been around for almost 3 decades.
Right. Well, what's wrong with studying charter schools and find out if they work or not?
Well, the data's in and they do work.
Okay. Oh, so who wants to put a moratorium on them?
Well, a representative. As a public charity, we don't really talk about politicians.
Right.
We talk about policy.
Okay.
But it's an individual from Southeast Missouri, and what gets me frustrated about this is okay, what you're trying to do is protect the status quo. That's why you've introduced the bill.
Right.
But you dress it up to say we want to study charter schools. We want to have these series of questions answered because, of course, we care about kids.
Right.
But, someone needs to call these people out and say, if you really care about kids, quit protecting the status quo. Quit coming up with these fig leaves for reasons why you can't do reform. And let's, look us in the eye and say, you know what? I like the status quo, and I'm not going to do anything.
Right, yeah, right. It is the proverbial, let's have an environmental study to find out if this bike path works well here.
Or our favorite thing in the Show Me State, let's create a blue ribbon commission to study this.
So charter schools have been around how long?
Oh, almost 3 decades. I want to say the first one was maybe 1991.
Right, yeah.
In Minnesota. And they are public schools, McGraw. That's the other thing. The charter schools are public schools.
And you can argue 100 different ways to Sunday about all this, but ultimately I come down to is talk to a parent of a student whose kid is stuck in a failing school. And that will open your eyes up to, wait a minute, there's got to be a better way.
McGraw, you're so right about that. And that's why you wondered why our elected officials can even look their constituents in the eye and say, well, this is something we need to do. We need to study this problem further. Opportunity for students, is really all a number of parents can hope for. And actually, when you look at what's going on here, it's the marginalized parents who don't have a voice.
Right.
Because if you've got income, you can change school districts. You can just move, right?
Right.
Or you send them to private school or you homeschool. But if you don't have those options, you're the one stuck. And where's the voice for them?
Right. Imagine if Ladue Watkins High School was unaccredited. And you lived in Ladue and you were forced to send your kid to Ladue Watkins that was unaccredited and had all sorts of trouble, and your kid was not going to get the education he deserved. People would freak out.
They would absolutely freak out because they will take care of their children. And the other thing, McGraw, actually, we just issued a study on this. There are 6 school districts in the state of Missouri that are provisionally accredited, and they've been provisionally accredited for a number of years, because if you look at our system of accountability, we don't do a really good job of holding our public schools accountable for really educating these kids. Provisionally accredited in our world, I suspect, McGraw, is we would say unaccredited.
Right. Well, provisionally accredited is just a made-up legal term, right? There's not something you're either accredited or you're not. This sort of provisional was sort of...
It's a way to avoid the consequences of being unaccredited.
Right. Charter schools. People will say that at charter schools, hey, they're not perfect. They've got all sorts of problems. Sometimes these charter schools are really bad.
Yeah, and you know what? They can be closed, and they are closed, which we don't do with our public schools. Instead, we make them provisionally accredited. We have a plan for them to get better. We don't hold them accountable when they really don't get better. I mean, McGraw, in 2016, for the Missouri students that took the ACT, only around 22% of them tested college ready across all the subjects. Our academic performance in this state is something that we should all be offended by, and we should all be clamoring for different opportunities for students to succeed. Does that mean it'll work for every student? No. But it is so charter schools aren't a panacea. Education savings accounts aren't the panacea. They're not the cure-all, the end-all. but they're giving parents options to figure out the best education option for their child.
And there have been some charter schools that have been around 15, 20 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they do have a track record of success.
Yeah.
And we have some in our city and in Kansas City.
Imagine if Ladue Watkins High School had a 22% proficiency rating on their ACT, SET, right? And then the parents were forced to send their kid there.
Well,
it wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen.
Because those parents would say, no, my kid's going to go to a better school.
That's right. And they have the options to do that.
And they have the voice to do it. And they have the economic power. And they have the political power to do it.
That's exactly right. And so really what frustrates me is that, we hear the old line, well, it's for the kids, right?
Right.
And then when you look at who's standing in the way of reform in the area of education, really it's the people who should be there advocating for the children. It's the educators.
Right. You're right. So back to this legislation. Yes, let's lock these kids in these failing schools for 22 more months while we study it some more.
And the sad thing is, McGraw, in Missouri, right now, charter schools, as a theoretical matter, only happen in St. Louis City and Kansas City. They could happen elsewhere, but school boards would have to actually sponsor them. And in other parts of the country, charter schools have been expanded. They're much more open and making them an option for everyone.
So the kids in rural Missouri don't have the option to go to charter schools?
Not unless their school district decided to sponsor a charter school. And so, one of the reforms we've talked about is just open it up more. Let actual sponsoring organizations decide whether there is a market there for a charter school or not. And when you look at the performance of some of our rural districts, I can guarantee you that parents there would love to have a charter school come in.
More on this on the Show Me Institute website?
Absolutely. ShowMeInstitute.org.
There you go. Brenda Towns, CEO of the Show Me Institute. Have a good